Hi, this is Steve from PixelBump. Welcome to our AE Bootcamp tutorial on tracking in After Effects and Mocha. In this video, we're going to explore 4 different ways to track footage. So the first way we're going to try to track is with the standard AE tracker. That's called point tracking. And the way you access that is to click on your footage, or is to double click on your footage so that it goes into the layer mode. And we've got this nice footage that I took at the Captain America Winter Soldier premiere with Amy Dallin interviewing the great Ed Brubaker. So let's just try to track something here in the background. To do that, we'll click on the Track Motion button here in the tracking panel. The first of which is what is the source of the motion. Here we're going to be using that stabilize and track footage. Which tracker are we going to want to use? In some cases you're going to have to use multiple trackers because a feature like, say, this T here, if Ed or Amy at some point covered that up, we would need to then switch to another feature to track. Next, it's a track type, and in this case, we're going to be using the transform, which means that we are going to get the X and Y data from the features we track. The next set of options are whether we want to track the position, the rotation, the scale, or any combination of those. For our first track, let's keep it simple. Let's just do the position. The final set of options we have are our target. Now, currently, we have no target available. So what you need to do is come into your composition, add a new null, and let's call this position tracker. We click the edit target, and our position tracker is now loaded. There are a couple different ways to track the footage. You can track it forwards, you can track it backwards, or you can track either forwards or backwards by 1 frame. So let's get a nice area here, and let's go after that T. We want to position on a unique area. So right here where the 2 parts of the T meet, that's great. We just want to get that T. Now this window here on the inside is the feature you're going to track. That's the pattern that After Effects is going to look for while it's tracking. This second square is going to be the area in which it searches for that feature. So if you have something with a lot of motion back and forth, you're going to want to make this pretty big. Now, I know that this isn't overly shaky footage, so a smaller tracking area will do. So let's go ahead and just try and analyze forward and see what we get. All right, so now we can see, based on all the different keyframe positions, that we received a track. But how good it is, we're not going to be sure until we test it. So let's apply our X and Y data to that null, and as you can see now, the null has a nice set of data on it. We're going to add a solid, and let's just make this 500 pixels by 500 pixels. And let's put it over here in the corner. Let's parent our green solid to the position tracker, and let's just turn off the volume for now since we don't need the sound. And it looks like we have a pretty solid track. Now, if the footage at any point had become too difficult for After Effects to track, there are a couple ways to deal with it. So let's come in here, let's turn off the position data, and let's reset our transforms on our null. And let's go ahead and delete our motion tracker. The second way you can go after after the track is to use the frame by frame. In most cases, I found this will give you a much more accurate track, but it does take longer. And you just sit here and you click frame by frame through the footage. It's not exciting, but it definitely gives you great results. So let's make sure we've got the right target. Hit OK and apply the XY data again. We should probably turn that green solid back on so we can see our results. And again, we have a nice solid track there. So let's look at tracking some rotation and scale as well. Let's delete that tracker. come back into our layer panel, and we are going to track motion, but we're going to turn on all three options. So now we've got two different tracker points here. And what you want to do is try to find something on the same level. So, you know, something along a wall, like this beautiful background we have here. So we'll once again go with the part of the T, and let's grab that other T over here. We'll analyze that forward. In just a second. And apply, let's make sure our target is correct. Position tracker. The easy way to make sure that your null is always going to be the first thing it selects is just move it to the top of the order. Otherwise, it's always just going to grab whatever's there. So let's apply that. And now we've got rotation and scale added as well. So this now integrates much more realistically as we're getting the tilt of the camera as it moves. Okay, so this is great if I want to just add in an element like this green square or maybe a piece of text. But what if I want to come in and add something with its own animation? So a way to deal with that is to actually stabilize the footage and then reverse track it. So how are we going to do that? Let's get rid of everything here. We'll get rid of our tracker. So let's pre-comp the footage, and we'll call it ed tracking, and we'll move all the attributes into the footage. That way, when we double click here, we're going to get those same in and out points. To do a stabilized track, the setup's really similar. We're going to come in, but instead of adding a null, we're just going to hit the stabilize motion. And in this case, let's add that rotation in again as well. So we're going to get our two feature trackers, and let's move one of these guys up here to that T again, and then we'll come over here and we'll add it to the same T over here again. We got a nice track that way last time, and I see no reason it won't work again. So let's analyze that forward. All right, and we'll apply that motion. So now, when we come back in, we're gonna have a bit of a different thing happening, which is you're gonna see the footage looks much more stable, but now we're getting this crazy stuff happening on the borders. So if I wanna come in and bring my solid looks like it's just sitting there no matter what. So now I can come in, I can animate it however I like. But once you've got it stabilized, you've got those edges no matter where you go. So how are we going to get rid of that? Well, the first thing we're going to want to do is open up the composition settings and increase the borders of our comp. Enough so that the entire piece of footage stays stays within this border. Next thing we need to do is come and take some of this position, some of the data, and reverse it. So let's take our ed tracking comp and drop it down so we can see both of these at the same time. We'll take the position from our stabilize and track, and we're going to click on the stopwatch for position and link it to the anchor point of the tracking. Now everything's gone crazy, but what we need to do next is take the anchor point in our stabilize and track, click on its stopwatch to bring up our expressions, and pick whip it over to the position. So we're just trading the data back and forth. Now we've got it right back where it should be, and the motion is back exactly as it was before, but we still have a small problem of the rotation. And to deal with that, you're going to click on the stopwatch, alt-click on the stopwatch, and take it and go down to the rotation in your tracking comp. And let's go ahead and close that out. And now it's even worse. Well, that's because all we have is the actual data. So what we want to do is come into our expression, contain the expression that was created in brackets and go times -1. And there we go. Now we've got our footage looking exactly as it was before we did anything. Yet in our tracking comp, we still have this beautifully stabilized piece of footage that we can add anything to. When you're doing paint outs or when you're adding something to the footage, this is just a great technique to allow you to work quickly and easily. Let's move this guy up into the pre-comps and move on to our camera tracking in After Effects. So camera tracking in After Effects is the same as tracking in PF Track or Synthesize or Buju. You're trying to create a virtual 3D cameraman. So let's give that a try. Let's click on our footage, and instead of having to go to the layer view, we can just click Track Camera. All right. Oh, we've got all these wonderful little colored X's. Each of those is its own unique feature track. Now the next step for this is we've got to pick an area that looks about right for the ground plane. So we're just going to kind of step through here until we find something that looks oriented somewhat correctly for what we're trying to do. Oh, there, that's close enough. So we're going to click there, create a null in camera, and now our 3D camera has been created, and it has all the positional data. So if we come in and we add another solid and we make it a 3D layer, we can attach it to our track null, get its position correct, and get its rotation correct. And let's scale that guy up a little bit. He's a little too small now. And let's adjust our rotation here. We got a little off. And as we step through, we're going to see that the positional track is really solid, but the rotational track isn't quite as good. And unfortunately, the After Effects tracker doesn't have a ton of features for fixing this. If this isn't going to be good enough, you're going to really want to think about going to another piece of software. If all you care about is positional data for this shot, you're probably fine. Or if you want to counter animate it, and which is pretty easy to do, we'll just come in here, do that. Here, there we go. And that looks pretty darn solid. For a free camera tracker, you're not really going to get anything better than this. The final way to track something is with Mocha. Now Mocha, as opposed to a feature tracker, does what's called planar tracking. So it's going to look for a large area and track that plane. So let's open up our Mocha track shot, and we have a nice example of an iPhone ad. So let's open up Mocha. So let's hit start, and let's create a new project. Let's import our clip, which is down here in the Elements folder, Video, Bootcamp Videos, Green Screen Hands.mov. So let's hit OK, and we've got our phone. Now we're going to come in and create an area to track. Now I don't have to be super precise about this, but I do want to make sure that there's enough points that Mocha can track with. Now I right-click to finish, and I'm going to come down here. Let's go ahead and make sure the perspective is tracked. Large motion is good. So again, much like After Effects, you've got to track forward to the frame or just track forwards. So let's go ahead and track our data forwards, and we're seeing that Mocha's doing a really nice job of following the shape of that iPhone. All right, so here we have enough of a track to see what we're really doing. So let's pull back. I think that looks really nice and solid. The next step we're going to want to do is look at our overlays. So right now, if I were to export this, this is showing me exactly where that plane is. If I go forward, you can see it's moving correctly, but it's not quite aligned the way I'd like. So let's turn on our alignment and come in, and we'll just adjust. And in this case, we're going to kind of want to simulate where we think that screen is. Make sure everything lines up pretty nicely. And now when we track, that plane is perfectly locked to our phone. So we'll hit export tracking data. We're going to come down here, and your choices are either to use corner pin data or transform data. So let's start with the corner pin data. We'll copy it to our clipboard. We'll come back to After Effects, and let's create a nice white solid this time. Make sure it's the same size as the comp, and we're going to paste. And it has created a corner pin effect and then applied that tracking data to that corner pin. So when we come in, we have really nice set of track data. Let's go ahead and preview that. Now again, what we could do here is we could come in and pre-comp this to the screen, but instead of moving all the attributes, let's leave the attributes here. So our corner pin data stays here, but our comp is now really nice and big. So if we want to add some text, make sure that text is visible. So that black text says hello. We'll scale it up, and we can come back to our tracked, and there we go. All right, that about wraps this one up. I hope you've learned some ways to track that you can use in your own projects. I'm going to move over to the next bootcamp video, which is Roto and Roto Brush. I hope you'll join me there. Thank you so much for watching. Go and create.